I suddenly had a wild idea that day. While making a chocolate cake, I scraped all the dog poop from the sole of my shoe into it. Then, holding the freshly baked cake, I knocked on my neighbor's door. The newly moved-in neighbor was completely unsuspecting and happily accepted my kindness. He picked up the cake and sniffed it first, and, noticing nothing unusual, stuffed it straight into his mouth.
Good?
You did good. Apology accepted, Nigella.
The reason I did this was that I was about to be driven insane by this neighbor. Just a few days before, a young man had moved in next door. At first, I didn't pay much attention, but the next day, when I came home from work, ready to rest, shrill music blasted from next door. They were throwing a party there. Although I was irritated by the noise, I still put up with it. After all, it was his first day moving in, and a little celebration was understandable. Maybe the party would end after a while, I thought. But I had underestimated how wild young people could be. By 4 a.m, the loud music was still blasting, shaking the walls like an earthquake. The next morning, as I passed by my lawn, I almost stepped on dog poop. That same neighbor had let his dog use my yard like it was some public park. I was too exhausted to deal with it, so I just sighed and went to work. The entire day felt endless. I could barely keep my eyes open. When I finally got home, all I wanted was to rest. But before I could even lie down properly, the heavy metal music started again. The same loud, unbearable noise. Remembering last night, I completely lost my patience. I stormed out of my house and knocked on his door, ready to explode. But to my surprise, the guy who looked rough and intimidating turned out to be pretty easy to talk to. He immediately told his friend to turn down the volume. He smiled and said it wouldn't happen again. His attitude was polite enough, so I calmed down a little and went back home. The music didn't stop completely, but it was softer. Not enough to keep me awake. I was so tired that I fell asleep right away. But a few hours later, I woke up again to the same deafening noise. It was 4 a.m, again. This time, the volume was even higher. My anger boiled over. I couldn't take it anymore. I rushed over to my neighbor's house again, furious, and started banging on the door. But he was clearly high, completely out of it, and didn't care what I said. When I threatened to call the police, he suddenly turned hostile. It was pointless trying to talk to him. So, I did call the police, but they told me it wasn't their problem, that I'd need to file a complaint with the municipal office along with the other neighbors. That made me even angrier. I went door to door trying to convince all the neighbors, but everyone else lived far enough away that the noise didn't bother them, and none of them wanted to get involved. I felt completely helpless. The pounding rhythm of the music even started syncing with the sound of me chopping vegetables in the kitchen. I hadn't slept properly for days, and I could feel myself breaking down. If I didn't get some rest soon, I wouldn't even make it to work the next day. So, I grabbed my car keys and drove off, just to get away from the noise. I ended up parking in a quiet park and fell asleep there for a few hours. When I returned home, my neighbor was still asleep. So I decided it was time to get some petty revenge. I grabbed my loudest lawnmower and fired it up right outside his window. But after taking just a few steps, I felt something squish under my shoe. It was dog poop. Again, on my lawn. I decided to get revenge properly. I immediately baked a chocolate cake, the same rich brown color, and mixed in dog poop I had stepped on earlier. When it was done, I knocked on my neighbor's door and handed it over with a fake smile, pretending it was an apology. He had no idea. He even thanked me and ate it right away. After that, I bought myself a pair of noise-canceling headphones online. Not only had I gotten my revenge, but I thought I had also solved the noise problem. That night, I finally felt a little peace. But when I lay down to sleep, I realized I couldn't actually rest with the headphones on. They were too tight and uncomfortable. I took them off, and instantly, the music hit again. The sound was even louder this time. The bass made the water glass on my nightstand vibrate. I turned over in frustration and noticed an old key lying in the drawer. My parents had lived next door before the new guy moved in, so I still had their spare key. I figured if he wasn't going to be a good neighbor, then I didn't need to be one either. The next day, I waited by the window, until I saw him leave. Then, I grabbed the key, went straight to his house, and let myself in quietly. Inside, I found all his speakers and stabbed holes through every one of them with a knife. Then I poured beer all over his music player and slipped back home. For the first time in days, the neighborhood was quiet again. That night, there was no music, just peaceful silence. I finally felt comfortable. But then came a knock at my door. He was standing there, saying he knew I still had a key. I tried to deny everything, but he wouldn't let it go. In the end, I gave up and slid the key under the door. Even though the noise stopped that night, I couldn't sleep at all. I was afraid he would find out and come after me for revenge. By morning, I still hadn't closed my eyes. I didn't even dare go outside. I called my boss and asked for a day off, pretending I was sick. Then I realized my cat was missing. I searched everywhere, calling her name, but she was gone. I immediately suspected my neighbor had something to do with it. Later that day, I saw a delivery truck outside his house. He had ordered an even bigger set of speakers. Then I found a note taped to my door. It said I owed him $850 per knife, he wrote, for damaging his speakers. I felt sick. I couldn't do anything but let the pounding music torture me again. The music started soon after, even louder this time. The nights kept passing like that, one after another, until I was barely holding myself together. I couldn't think straight anymore. I was completely exhausted, and my sanity was slipping away. That night, everything suddenly went quiet, and the lights next door went out at the same time. I was lying on my bed when I thought I heard something faint. It was a soft, familiar sound, a meow. It was my cat. The sound was coming from next door. A few moments later, the power came back on and the loud music started again, but I was sure of what I had heard. I climbed up to my attic, where the wall connected to the neighbor's attic. The music was loud enough to cover the noise, so I grabbed a tool and started breaking through the wall. I made a small hole big enough to crawl through. When I got inside his attic and looked around, I froze. Under the bed was my cat, dead. I had treated her like my own child, and now she was gone. In that moment, I only wanted one thing, to make him pay. The next morning, when the party finally ended, I went over quietly with a hammer in my hand. The door was unlocked. I stepped inside. He was asleep on the bed, snoring loudly. I stood over him, gripping the hammer so tightly that my hands shook. I raised it slowly, trying to push away the fear. But just then, a girl lying next to him turned her head. I looked closer and realized I had seen her before. Her school uniform was on the chair nearby, and the name tag reminded me. Her mother was a well-known local troublemaker, someone everyone avoided. That's when I got a better idea. Instead of swinging the hammer, took out my phone and called the girl's mother. I told her everything, where her daughter was and who she was with. It didn't take long. Within minutes, the woman showed up with a few rough-looking men. I sat outside their door on a small stool, put on my headphones, and watched quietly as they went in. The shouting started soon after, but I didn't care to listen. I just sat there, calm for the first time in days.